Welcome back to Killerland News at 10. Scott Abdallah joins us once again. He's the man who prosecuted Donald Mueller for the second time. Scott, as this execution is being carried out right now, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, after 22 years, I can't help but feel a sense of finality that this nightmare is finally drawn to a conclusion. I obviously have a deep sense of reverence for our judicial system that affords all criminal defendants many rights under our Constitution, but at the same time ultimately holds those responsible accountable for their crimes. You know, frankly, I think South Dakota should feel a little safer after tonight. I mean, we've seen about recent escape attempts, and I think that anybody that worked on this case would tell you that if Donald Mueller ever escaped from those walls, it was a virtual certainty that another child was going to be killed. And so I just think it's a long time coming, and finally tonight is the night. One
thing that hasn't been brought up a lot during this case is Mueller had a long history of criminal offenses, even before the case of Becky O'Connell.
He did. I believe 9 prior felony convictions, and I think that a lot of the law officers that worked on this crime will tell you that you wonder how many other crimes Donald Mueller committed that he was never caught, apprehended, and prosecuted for. I mean,
because you said 9 felony convictions.
It's hard. It's inconceivable to me that when somebody commits 9 felonies that you're going to catch them every single time. And so I often wonder, as a lot of law enforcement officers do, how many other crimes out there that Donald Mueller was responsible for. You know, Jacob Wetterling, a name that we all came to know in this area from out of Minnesota, was abducted about 8 months before Becky O'Connell. So we'll never have the answers to those questions, but again, with as many felony convictions as he had, it just seems to me that it's highly likely he committed other crimes that he was just never caught.
Another thing that hasn't been brought up a lot either is that Mueller had a chance to spare his own life. You offered him a deal.
We did, and that was with the blessing of Becky's family. They wanted answers. They wanted answers to some questions about Becky's last moments, and they wanted to give him an opportunity to spare his own life. And so he was given an offer to plead guilty, to accept responsibility, to come into court and admit what he did, and frankly, he never even responded to the letter. And so, you know, when I think about tonight and think about the circumstances, he has only himself to blame.
Recently in court, you're bringing this up, he did confess. He admitted to the crime. What went through your mind?
I mean, I think like Jeff Maston, I was shocked. I mean, I just couldn't believe it. And in fact, it was Mike Larson that called and told me that he had confessed. And my first reaction to Mike was, "You must have misunderstood. I just don't believe it." So you know, he denied his guilt for 22 years, and then finally, out of the blue, this summer, decides to admit his guilt.
Anything in particular that you're looking for during this execution tonight as a former prosecutor?
You know, we spend so much time talking about Donald Mueller, and frankly, I don't think he deserves this attention. I think the person that we need to focus on tonight and that we need to remember is Rebecca O'Connell. She was a sweet, innocent young girl who lost everything, and she would be in her early 30s today. And I think we should take this time to reflect. Parents, teachers, community members should reflect on what we can do as a community to lean on each other to keep a better eye on our children, because as terrifying as it may sound, I mean, this could happen again. And so I just think that we need to take this opportunity to remember that and to remember where our kids are at all time.
One last question for you. You were invited to be one of the witnesses tonight. Why did you turn it down?
You know, there's a lot of law enforcement officers that worked on this case, and as Jeff Maston pointed out, they're the ones that deserve all the credit for this. I mean, they worked their heart and soul, and especially the ones that were first on the crime scene. Those officers are left with these images in their minds for the rest of their lives, and they live with that in kind of a post-traumatic stress kind of way. And so there were a number of law enforcement officers that were invited to witness the execution, and a lot of them wanted to be there to try and get some sense of closure. So I declined my invitation, but asked that a law enforcement officer go in my place, and the warden granted that request. And so I just think it's for those officers that were involved and were at that crime scene, hopefully they can get some closure after tonight.
All right. Scott Abdallah, thanks for being here.